This is The Cut. The Cut Podcast with Pete Ferguson. Film, music, games, entertainment. This is The Cut from Telegraph Talk.
Hello again, this is the Telegraph's entertainment podcast, The Cut. This week in The Cut, we spoke to Charlie Fink, the lead vocalist from Noah and the Whale. He spoke to us about their recent gig at Somerset House, as well as starting work on their brand new album. Our film critic Tim Robey reviews Toy Story 3 and Inception. Nick Cowen chats to us about some new games, and of course we take a look at some fresh new music.
Summer 2010. The Cut on Twitter, Facebook and telegraph.co.uk/The Cut.
First up though, this week we spoke to the really rather lovely Charlie Fink, the lead vocalist from Noah and the Whale. It's certainly been a rather successful couple of years for the band on both sides of the Atlantic and in fact around the world. They performed recently at London Somerset House. I asked Charlie what it was like to perform at such an iconic venue. How was it for you, as they say?
It was an absolute joy. I mean, it's so great when you get to perform gigs in venues like that.
Because you described your gig at the Manchester Cathedral as being overwhelmingly incredible. Was that the building, the audience, or both?
It's hard to say what makes a good gig, you know, because it's a combination of so many things. So it's not purely about your performance. It's also about sort of the ambience, the crowd, you know, and it was just one of those gigs where, and I think the same for Somerset House, where it just felt like, you know, everything combined in the right quantities, and it was just amazing.
How does it compare to working in the studio? Do you prefer beavering away in the studio when you can sort of practice different styles and so on? Or do you actually like being on stage in front of the audience?
No, I do love being in the studio. I think my favourite part of what I do is the creative side about, you know, the writing and creating a song out of nothing. But yeah, I mean, the immediate sort of buzz from playing live is a hard thing, you know, to beat or to compare to anything else, really. I'm just grateful that I have a job that I can do both, you know. So.
And what about seeing the audience reaction to new material? That must be a bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah, we did a gig in New York and we just finished mixing the record where I played all 11 songs from the album. I realised that was probably an overly brave thing to do. You know, it's hard. It is hard, you know, for people to connect as much with a song they haven't heard before as it is to something they know well. It is kind of nerve-wracking, but it's always fun as well. You're always most excited about whatever song you wrote most recently.
Now, it's not the first time you've played as such at Somerset House, because randomly you played a game of football there.
The game of football was connected to a gig. We were supporting the Zootons 2 years ago. During the sound check, we had a football match against the Zootons and won 1-0.
What can you tell me about the new album? Because all your live dates have pretty much finished now, and you're going off to California to crack on with your new material. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, I'm going out 6 weeks to California, working with a guy called Jason Lader, who used to be Rick Rubin's engineer. The record itself, I'm never very good at sort of describing things to people before they've heard them, but it's another revolution for us, I think. And the songs are mostly sort of narrative-based, like short stories, and I hope people are going to like it.
And talking of short stories, people can watch a film that you directed on your website, and no doubt it's on YouTube and so on. What can you say about the film?
Yeah, the film I made to go with our second record. But I mean, the reason I wanted to do that was the second album. I wanted to make a record that people would listen to as a whole, you know, because it's an album where there's a story that runs from beginning to end. With the film, it's kind of encouraging to take it all in as one and, I don't know, maybe open it up a little more as well.
Any sign of a new tour for next year?
The plan is probably to put the album out around March, so I guess we'll be starting touring either the very end of this year or the beginning of 2011.
Have you got a title for us?
I've got a few, you know, it's hard. We've had a few things thrown around. I've got one at the moment that I'm quite settled on, but I can't reveal it.
Okay, don't blame me for asking that.
No.
Okay, Charlie, thanks very much for talking to us.
Pleasure.
This is The Cut.
Okay, time now to check out some new movie releases with our film critic Tim Robey.
Film.
So, Tim, two of the year's biggest films are due for release. We'll talk about Toy Story 3 in a moment, but first of all, Inception.
Everyone is very excited about Inception, and rightly so. This is really kind of spectacular stuff. Christopher Nolan, who made The Dark Knight and Batman Begins and The Prestige, casting Leonardo DiCaprio in the lead, and they've been really hiding what the movie's all about, so I'm going to be careful not to sort of divulge too much, because I think the best way to come into it is really not knowing almost anything. All you kind of need to know is that it's about dreams, and it's sort of a heist movie about dreams, and it's very techno, and it's very clever and layered. I was dazzled by it, and then I think when you begin to think about it deeply, there are a few little problems with some of the sort of depth that he's going for, but it's incredibly clever stuff. This is
sounds very mysterious.
Yeah.
Is it overly clever, bordering pretentious?
You could argue that, yeah. And one thing it does lack is a kind of deft sense of humour. It's taking itself pretty seriously, and even when it's sort of trying to be a bit jokey, that feels a bit forced, as if they kind of know, we better lighten things up here because it's getting awfully heavy. But I think people will actually just go along with the ride and kind of buy into it.
And no drinking before you go and see that film.
Yeah, it's serious sort of concentration stuff, and it starts in a really complicated way too, so you have to kind of be on your feet.
Other end of the spectrum, but still a really big movie, Toy Story 3.
Toy Story 3, so the worry with this was, could they match the greatness of the first two films? There's always a bit of a danger with the third in any series that you kind of run out of ideas. And I think they avoid almost all those problems. You could argue that they're copying the second film a bit too much, I think, because it sort of has the same kind of structure where the toys leave Andy's playroom and end up kind of imprisoned. This is very much like Toy Story 2, but it's really kind of just as bright and charming and clever and funny and really emotionally engaging, I think, this one. People will be delighted with it.
And is this in 3D?
Yep, you can see it in 3D. I saw it in 3D, and I'm almost tempted to go back and see it in 2D, just for the reason that those 3D glasses add that layer of kind of dinge to it. They kind of darken the image, and I kind of missed, for that reason, the kind of amazing brightness of the visuals in the first two films. So I'd quite like to see how it plays in 2D as well.
Voices, same characters, same voices?
There are some new characters who turn up as well. Timothy Dalton has a small role.
What?
As a sort of very vain little actor hedgehog figure called Mr. Pricklepants. And Ned Beatty is a big mauve bear called Lotsa Bear. And I like all the new characters, and there's also Michael Keaton plays Ken, who is Barbie's love interest and is kind of this incredibly vain metrosexual ascot-wearing prima donna figure, and he's hilarious.
Goes without saying Mr. Hanks is in it.
All the old crew are in it. Some of the sort of more subsidiary characters have left, but the main gang are all there.
Is it the best of all three?
I'm always torn between the first and second. They have different strengths. I would say it's fractionally less good than either of them, but still really, really good. For me, better than Up and better than Ratatouille.
Really?
And probably better than most of WALL-E, except for that amazing first 45 minutes or so of WALL-E.
Good stuff. All right, as always, Tim, thanks very much.
Cheers.
As always, you can keep up to date with the latest film news and reviews. All you have to do is head to telegraph.co.uk/The Cut, and we'll be testing Toy Story 3, the game, with our games critic Nick Cowen in just a moment. But first, though, here's some brand new music.
Summer 2010. The Cut from telegraph.co.uk. Music.
And first up is the debut solo single from Killers frontman Brandon Flowers. This is Crossfire. I Can Change is the new single from what might be their last album. This is LCD Sound System.
Never change, never change, never change, never change. Never change, never change, never change. That's just who I'm very in love with.
And finally, Australia's DMB Supremos, Pendulum and Witchcraft. And there's more music stories for you to check out online at telegraph.co.uk/The Cut and simply follow the links. Finally, for this week's podcast, here's our games critic, Nick Cowen.
The Cut from telegraph.co.uk. Games.
Nick, as you may have heard, we were talking to Tim earlier about Toy Story 3. He really likes the film. What do you think of the game?
Game's really good, actually, which is weird because most movie tie-in games are rubbish. This one's really, really good. It comes in two modes. There's a campaign mode, and then there's the toy box mode, which is sort of a free roam mode. It's a lot of fun. The animation's top-notch. They couldn't get Tom Hanks and the crew to do the voices, but they're as near as possible as they can get. Yeah, it's a platformer. It's loads of fun. You should try it out.
Okay, now a totally different type of game, which is probably more my sort of thing than Toy Story, Crackdown 2.
Yeah, Crackdown 2 takes the open world Grand Theft Auto template and injects it with PCP. You take on the role of a super cop, a lab-grown agent who is part RoboCop, part NFL linebacker. In the first game, you had to take out 3 crime cartels. In the second game, the city that you're in, Pacific City's fallen on hard times. During the day, it's controlled by terrorists called The Cell, and in the evenings, mutated monsters called freaks roam about attacking anything that moves.
How long did it take them to think of freaks?
About 10 minutes. Well, the thing is about the game is that its entire plot could fit on the back of a matchbox. It's kill all the baddies, basically. The sense of freedom you have running around Crackdown is immense. You can do anything. You can leap tall buildings in a single bound. You can drive around in a tank and blow things up. You have weird and wonderful weaponry at your disposal. You've got a glide suit, which you can extend hang time when you leap between buildings. You've got a great weapon called a mag grenade, and what this does is if you throw it onto someone and throw another one onto a car, it creates a magnetic field and the car drags them down the road. You can also take 2 mag grenades and throw them onto buildings on either side of the street, and you can use that as a slingshot which fires vehicles at your opponents.
Genius.
It is. All the weapons you get nastier and nastier as time goes on. You are hell on wheels. It's lots of fun.
Can you phone your girlfriend like you can in GTA?
You don't need a girlfriend, you're an agent. You've got Crackdown. Who needs a girlfriend?
Oh, right. Okay, and finally, Singularity.
Singularity is a bit of a weird one.
I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, exactly. No one's heard of it before. Activision kind of sent this one out to die. We first saw Singularity at Activision's pre-E3 briefing last year, and then we didn't hear anything of it at all until 3 weeks ago. It arrived in the post, and we were all like, really? They finished this?
I forgot about the game, yeah.
They finished this? I thought they just threw it away. And that's really strange because Singularity is a lot of fun. It's a shooter which has a time-bending element to it. And as a shooter, it's really a load of fun. And I can't believe Activision haven't given this the care and attention it deserves.
It's not the first time they've done that.
It's not. It's been a weird year for Activision because when Blur, which was excellent, as you remember, came down the line, we had hardly heard anything of that on its way out the gate. Of course, a big campaign launched behind Blur almost after it had been released, which is not really the way you want to go. But Singularity, there are no adverts that you've seen, there's no TV spots, and that's a real shame because more people should be playing this game. It's not exactly what you'd call the most original game in the world, but it is immense fun.
Maybe it means it's slightly more affordable there.
If not now, certainly in the future, unless word of mouth leads to better sales.
Brilliant. Sounds like 3 really good games for this week.
There are 3 really good games.
Nicholas, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And that's it for this week. Thank you, as always, for listening. And while I remember, don't forget to check out our Formula 1 podcast here at The Telegraph. To download, simply head to iTunes and do a search for Telegraph F1. Or if you like, go to telegraph.co.uk/F1. Keep up to date with all that's happening in the world of F1. And what an exciting season it's been so far. Don't forget you can download The Cut weekly and automatically by subscribing in iTunes. Or you can also head to telegraph.co.uk/The Cut. Keep up to date with what we're planning for next week's edition by following us on twitter.com/The Cut Podcast. If you try hard enough, you can also find us lurking around on Facebook somewhere as well. Thanks very much indeed for listening. Until next week, I'm Pete Ferguson, and that was The Cut.